Welcome to your Truth Reveal video podcast, sharing the power of self-knowledge. I'm Erika Marcoux. Episode 8, Know Your DNA, is the second part of an interview with Deborah Dunn. This interview explores why DNA and mitochondria are such an important health topic and how understanding this genetic information can optimize your energy, health, and aging. All of Season 1 helps you to be your own health expert as I interview industry professionals to explore your hidden mental and physical health potential. I'm here today with Dr. Deborah Dunn. She received her medical degree from the University of Texas and her master's in applied environmental public health from Tulane University. She completed a fellowship from Dr. Andrew Weil's Integrative Medicine program at the University of Arizona and completed training from the Institute of Functional Medicine. Dr. Deborah Dunn is the founder of Integrative, a company that interprets mitochondrial DNA to help people optimize energy, health, and aging.
Understanding perhaps who you are and appreciating that you have come from a long line of survivors.
How do you identify a haplogroup?
We identify a haplogroup by finding mutations in the genome of the mitochondria. We have a technology, a bioinformatics technology that helps us analyze it, and we compare it to a standard, which is probably not very helpful for you. So let me give you a better analogy. Imagine you're here in Austin, Texas, and you have
which I am.
Which you are. And you have a necklace, and on your necklace you have a yellow bead. Okay? And you have children, and you give them the yellow bead.
Okay.
And this goes on for thousands of years. And finally, the weather changes, and one of them has to leave. And so she goes to Oklahoma. And in Oklahoma, it's very, very hot. For example, it's extremely hot. And she stays there and has children, passes them the yellow bead. Thousands of years later, in Oklahoma, there happens to be one daughter born with a blue bead. So now she has the yellow bead and the blue bead. And she goes on to pass this down to her children. And now one of her children leaves and goes to Louisiana. And in Louisiana, after multiple generations, she gets a red bead and she passes that down. So if I have her necklace in Louisiana and I see a yellow bead, well, I know she was in Austin.
Isn't that fascinating?
And that is how we can figure out the mutations that you have. And then, of course, we know those mutations affect a particular protein in your engine.
So let's say you have the blue, the yellow, and the red bead. Is that a particular haplogroup?
Yes. So the yellow would be one haplogroup. Then the yellow and blue would be a haplogroup. And then the yellow, blue, and red. And
that combination.
Yeah. And there are spans of, thousands upon thousands of years. And so the question I know you're going to say is, well, what happened in Louisiana for her to get the red bead? And what does it do? Mm-hmm. Why is it helping her? And those are the questions that we are curious about. And then let's assume we're going to do studies, and we have 1,000 people with the yellow bead, and we have 1,000 people with the yellow and blue bead, and we have 1,000 people with the yellow, blue, and red. Then we look to see, is there anything going on? Do you have an increased prevalence of any particular diseases? How can we look at this? And then we evaluate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so fascinating and potentially so helpful in a lot of different arenas. Health, lifestyle, general well-being.
Just understanding perhaps who you are and appreciating that you have come from a long line of survivors.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Survivors.
Have these changes in you that are so old, and through all the years of famine and starvation and these refugees and Eves that have died, and yet here you are. It's amazing. It's remarkable.
And what a gift you're providing for people to be able to share that.
I hope so. This idea of belonging is so important, to just know you're really not alone in this world.
And that you are a certain way for a reason.
Yes. So perhaps you can understand that with kindness and compassion. In the clinic, we talk about the polar bear in Hawaii.
Yes.
So if you have the polar bear in Hawaii, and the polar bear is losing hair, sluggish, can't have babies because all he's eating is poi and pineapple. And everyone's yelling at the polar bear. And you're yelling at the polar bear because we're harsh on ourselves far more than people around us are. And it really is not necessarily the polar bear's fault.
He's in the wrong environment.
eating the wrong food.
Eating the wrong
And he can't really do his exercises very well. So, I mean, it's a simplification, but it's a great analogy to kind of understand it.
That's great. Yeah. I have another question for you. Why does it matter in today's world that I carry these ancient maternally inherited mutations?
It's important for a couple of reasons. It's possible in the future that we will manipulate our genetics, including our mitochondria. So the ability to track people will be lost. And in fact, some of your ancient mothers will be lost. And it's already happening.
Really?
Yeah. And in ways it needs to happen. I mean, there are life-altering interventions that are occurring. It's not impossible to think that there might be particular mitochondria that are more ideal to this modern world. And we don't know what that will be like. So in one way, we're memorializing.
I love that.
This history of who you are.
I have an archaeology background too, so this is...
You do?
Yeah.
Oh.
I love the preserving the history is so important.
It is important. And again, it's connecting to who you are, connecting to the struggles of who you are, and the idea that you are not alone here on earth. So I, for myself, when I was recreating my great ancestor, I started to envision her and I wondered about her, and from that came a book. So we now have a series of books because besides the science and understanding your risks that you have, connecting into your maternal heritage is such a beautiful thing, and to not be lost. Because it's interesting that Mother Nature or God left the engine part to be passed on only by the mother. I mean, it's an interesting thing. So there's contributions, right, from the male, but this core part comes from, it's left into the hands of the maternal line. It's a great way to memorialize it. So we have created characters. We've created a series of books for each genetic Eve, and they are a coming of age series of this first new mutator in her region.
Such a creative way to wrap the scientific information and share it.
It always is better in a story.
Oh, I agree.
Right? It's like the story is something that you can pass down and that you remember. And we spent a lot of time looking at, eye color and hair color and skin color and then where that group ended up, and kind of trying to create a benevolent figure that would be appealing. And then within the book, we have an opportunity to have ancestral beings show compassion and kindness to the main character.
Tell me more about the compassion piece.
We are so harsh on ourselves and say things to ourselves we would never say to our best friend or to those that we love. And it's natural to some degree because we know how the brain works. It has a tendency to focus on anything that's really dangerous or is a threat, from the amygdala. For survival. The flip side is it's gotten out of control in our current world.
Dr. Deborah Dunn is referencing mindful self-compassion, by Dr. Kristen Neff and Dr. Christopher Germer.
So if you look at the classic flight, fight, or freeze scenarios, which make sense in the wild, make sense for our genetic eaves, they don't make so much sense in our modern world right now for all of us. And it's manifesting in the following ways. So freeze is manifesting in rumination. You're sort of frozen in that thought. Flight is self-criticism. Why? Because that's to motivate you to fight better, right? That's like, oh, you can do that. It's seen as motivation, but it doesn't really work. Flight is moving into shame and isolation. We have this opportunity to put phrases out that I've learned from Kristen Neff and from Dr. Germer from Harvard. This is part of the human experience.
That's right.
Suffering and difficulty and hardship and pain is part of your Eve's past. Mm-hmm. It's part of your mother's past. It's part of our past.
And our future.
And our future. And it's just part of life. So rather than beating ourselves up over it and shaming ourselves or not engaging in life, what are some techniques we can do?
How did you incorporate that into the books?
Each girl has to go out on their own on a journey. And their mutation allows them to sort of save the village.
Oh,
because
nice.
They have this particular
it's the
mutation.
Journey.
Yeah. And they encounter various people, and they also have their own wise ancestors. Mm-hmm. So because they are coming of age, and, the prefrontal cortex hasn't shaped, they do things they shouldn't do because that's part of their journey and their process.
Okay.
And rather than a lot of shaming or admonition, there is language that's very understanding.
Nice.
And practices to be kind, to be mindful, and to understand it's part of humanity.
Wonderful. You analyzed my DNA. What are some key takeaways for me?
Oh, you are so interesting. Oh my
How
goodness.
So?
Well, on one hand, your frequency in the world is very, very low.
Frequency in the
like
world
the number of people
low.
of you in dig sites in population studies, it's very tiny.
Okay, so I'm representing a tiny group.
And then the other thing is you hung out in an area that was isolated for a long time. I told you about the beads. Let's say you picked up the red bead. You picked up the red bead and you kept that red bead a super long time. And the only way that could have happened is if you just didn't have a lot of adverse conditions in the region that you were in. Like you were already pretty good. Or you didn't have a lot of mixing. You didn't have...
Or I didn't travel much.
Exactly. You were in a good place because you would have left if it wasn't pretty good. So on one hand, you're old. The number of mutations you have and where they're at, they're pretty old. Mm-hmm. And that dictates a certain type of engine.
Uh-huh.
And then on the flip side, you didn't pick up your, red bead until pretty young. In other words, you stayed in this area a very long time. While other groups were changing a lot.
Oh, I see.
You were not changing.
Okay.
So that makes you quite unique.
Huh.
Yeah. And your physiology is quite unique too. And it has nothing to do with how you look on the outside, which is what's so interesting.
Which is all internal.
Yeah, it's your mitochondria, which has no color.
Yeah.
So that is interesting just about your particular history and your adaptations. And your tendencies will be closer to an older ancestral machinery. I'm not sure it's great for you necessarily to spend lots of time in shivering and trying to be really cold and trying to build brown fat and trying to have a new biogenesis using cold-induced biogenesis. Mm-hmm. You're just really pretty old,
Right.
I'm not convinced it's really going to help you. There's so few of you. I don't really know.
We're the mystery group.
But in terms of where mutations occur, I can see that your mutations occur. You're a pretty temperate climate. Uh-huh. So at the last, usually in the ATPase at the very last or the fifth one, if we see a lot of mutations there, well, I know you're a waster. Like, I know you waste a lot of heat. You're not very efficient.
Okay.
And you don't have a lot in that area. Yours are kind of in these other areas.
So I would do well in temperate temperatures.
Yeah. You probably don't feel energized around frigid climates.
Not at all.
Probably doesn't really
It feels
work
very
for you.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, probably doesn't work for you because your mutations are just old. And thyroid connects to mitochondria as well, right? And that also regulates temperature. Whereas I produce so much heat. Like, I am so hot all the time.
Wow.
I feel far better in a really, really, really cold place. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now I know why. And so it's like, okay, I need to wear the cold vest, or I need to go to cryotherapy. And if I do feel better.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So those are little changes.
Well, one thing that you mentioned was that we've adapted alongside foods. That's the way that I'm interpreting it.
I love how you put that.
Okay.
Yeah. We fit into our environment. Like thousands and thousands of years. We knew when the sun came out and when the sun went down. The type of foods that were around us dictated which proteins would be upregulated or downregulated.
Okay.
We created a particular microbiome that was best for our babies, because babies are born through the vaginal tract. It's not clean. It has microbiota, both from feces and vaginal microbiota, and that gets colonized in a baby. That sets up their lymph system. That sets up their imprint of their microbiome. And it was a beautiful synergy. So when I look at particular diseases that are high in certain EVEs, and then I go back and I look at the natural foods and what's really high in those natural food sources,
wow,
that's what people are using to treat those afflictions with nutraceutically. They're in the foods in that region. We have a complete database that looks at the origins of food so we can pair it.
That's fascinating.
Because foods have origins too. Right?
Yes,
When you think about it, foods have origins. And one common misperception is tomatoes in Italy. That comes up a lot. Like, tomatoes are from Italy. Well, no, they're not from Italy. So,
where are tomatoes from?
Yeah, so tomatoes, if you go way, way, way back in time, there's a particular group they belong to, the nightshade group.
Yes.
You've heard of nightshade groups. And during the times 200 million years ago, Pangea, continents were smushed together. And this old group of nightshades started in kind of Central Africa and spread to South America and North America because they were on their western border. Like, that was an easy way to spread those seeds.
Has nothing to do
Europe
with Italy.
was so far away. Once all the continents opened up, and then we put them on a map, and you can actually see the spread, and you can overlay your genetic EVE and see. In modern times, certain people don't tolerate those lectins, those compounds on the seeds and the skins very well.
Right.
And they're often people that are not native to those foods. So that's one example of food and mitochondrial and antigen presenting or lectin interaction. And we are working up all the foods for that and have put it together. And it's really
That's
fun.
coming, huh?
Yeah, it's fun.
That's great.
You can just upload your 23andMe or FTDNA. Really, FTDNA is better because it's a full sequence of mitochondria versus just 23andMe is sort of a shotgun approach.
Okay.
But it's enough for us to kind of work with and still.
So it's the raw data that you get from 23andMe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We may release something earlier where if you just want to put in your haplogroup, if you don't want to share your own personal data, that might be an option. It won't show if you're a new mutator, but it would certainly give you information about your EVE.
Okay.
So that's an option as well.
Okay.
And then a beautiful report is generated that explains migration patterns and food patterns, cultural information about your particular EVE, foods that were there in the environment for her. Supplements are recommended. Food is always best. But if you can't do food, you can
do supplements. This is fascinating to me too.
Oh,
Would you like to share a little bit about these products?
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
With each of our books and each of our EVEs, we have created a special line of products that use only those herbs, flowers, and healing properties from that particular area of the journey. So Hava, for example, is Hava's forest, and she has a combination using a lot of different pine and sage and mugwort, juniper berry, blackcurrant, chamomile. It's 100% pure. Each one will have their own particular line based on the foods and flowers and healing herbs in it. And then in the books, we have special teas and recipes.
Oh, wow.
As well. We wrote the books so that you could share them with your daughters, because we want that compassion bridge to start now. So they're very appropriate for 13 years old and up. You could read them together. And it would be wonderful to take the cream and rub it on your chest, rub it on your stomach. You can use it over your whole body.
Yeah.
And then get into the space and read the books and connect into this ancestor that you have and your mother or grandmother or son, and make the connection stronger.
Yeah.
Oh, just thank you for the honor to talk about this.
Oh, for sure. I really
excited.
appreciate it. And I think that this information is so new and your approach is so unique that I'm just so happy to share it with our listeners.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Our featured product for this episode is Super Ubiquinol CoQ10 with enhanced mitochondrial support. CoQ10 is an essential nutrient your body needs for healthy mitochondrial function, a process that produces your energy at the cellular level. Over time, levels of this enzyme in your body naturally decrease. This supplement increases energy and has powerful antioxidant properties, protecting mitochondrial DNA from damage. Go to yourtruthreveal.com/store and use promo code TRUTH for a 20% discount. Episode 9 is titled Know Your Development with Dr. Renee Rogers.
It's kind of easy for everybody to get that children go through stages of development. But sometimes we kind of take for granted that once we grow up, we stay the same. We're not really aware of the evolution of consciousness.
What is your maternal haplogroup? I invite you to post your answer in the comments below. There are also great resources in the description. Please subscribe and click on the bell so you'll know when the next episode is available. And for more learning, download your free worksheet at yourtruthrevealed.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Erika Marcoux.